just don't feel the same. Just don't feel the same.
All right. Here we are. Joe Kilgallon.
You nailed it. First try. Look at that. You're off to a good start.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So thank you for joining us on our maiden voyage with Coming Up Comic.
I feel very honored. First one. That's awesome.
So let's see. We met 2 years ago.
We met on a pub crawl. Do you remember that?
We
It was
did.
the Jefferson Park pub crawl where
Yes.
people just walked around all the neighborhood bars
Mhm.
drinking the cheapest beer they could find. It was a good time.
Yes. And we were first at Twilight.
Yes. Twilight, typical Chicago dive bar, hole in the wall. And then we
Yes.
went to Six Penny, which is not a dive bar. It's a wonderful Irish pub on Chicago's
Mm.
northwest side. If you're ever in Chicago, check out the Six Penny.
Yes.
That should be worth a free Guinness next time I'm in, I hope.
Cheers, for
Cheers
sure.
to that, right?
Yes, we love the Six Penny. And it was there in the Six Penny smoking area, which I fondly refer to as the confessional, where we did talk about comedy. We talked about podcasting. We talked about our hopes and our dreams. And yeah, that was 2 years ago. So here we are.
Damn, that was it? I feel like it's longer now, right? Just to paint the image for the listeners, it is kind of a confessional because it's this narrow, like brick wall on one side where people go to smoke at this bar. And then on the other side is the windows to the bathroom.
Right.
So while you hear people having heart-to-heart bar conversation,
Yes.
you could hear people flushing the toilet, which is just, that's the way it should be, I feel
Yes,
like.
it's a great place for eavesdropping. I was in there recently speaking with one of your St. Pat alumni. He mentioned that your grandfather had some connections to the West Side
Oh,
Irish
yeah.
on Jackson Street.
Yeah, there's a
Tell
thing
us
called the
about that.
4400, which was like a gang of sorts when you think about it, but they didn't look at themselves that way. So it was called that because it was 4400 west in the city. That's, how far west it was from downtown. Chicago's a grid for those of you listening around the country. And it was just a group of dudes who just made sure, people acted right, essentially. If anyone was getting out of hand or so-and-so got a little too handsy with, Mikey O'Brien's sister, they would send over some people to kind of rough them up a little bit.
Right.
They'd send over the Kilgallons and the Brennans and the Sullivans and all the other names, the Caseys, all those people. But yeah, and then he went on to be an incredibly accomplished guy, my grandfather. So, and here I am, a college dropout, talking about all the jokes I've written and whatnot.
So was this your mom's dad or dad's dad?
My dad's dad. I'm not close with my mom's family, but I grew up insanely close to my father's family. Like my cousins will come out to any big show. I've had shows where I've had friends be like, dude, the ticket list of all the people who bought tickets, there's like 19 Kilgallons, several Duffys, so they come out in full force. I grew up, on the northwest side of Chicago, Portage Park neighborhood, and my family grew up, like my extended family, not too far away. And so every Sunday growing up, from the time I was born to when my grandmother passed away, when I was about to turn 18, we would go there for dinner. So Sunday night dinner at grandma's house every week, like clockwork, and it was the best. And I think just, a way to get attention was to be the funny one. But everyone was funny. I thought they were all funny. I never thought like being funny was something that stuck out until I was the funny one in school. Because in my family, everyone was funny, I felt like. When I was growing up, and especially the high school I went to, if you told people, oh, I want to be a comedian or I want to be an actor or a musician or whatever, they'd be like, all right, cool. But like, what trade do you want to do? Because
Right.
that's
What do you
not
really want to
realistic.
do?
They just thought that wasn't possible because they didn't know anyone in their world to ever do anything like that. Everyone was kind of like play it safe, get the job security, that type of thing.
So when did you first realize you were funny in school?
I was weirdly, my kindergarten teacher told my mom that I was either going to be a comedian or a writer. And at the time, I didn't even know I was being funny. I just was being me. But then I think I knew I was really funny probably by like fourth, fifth grade. I'd get in trouble for cracking jokes. I got checks on my report card for talking too much, and I loved comedy. I loved sitcoms. I loved all that stuff.
Yeah, what were your influences as a kid?
Early influences. All right, so my parents divorced when I was 4, going on 5, or maybe I just turned 5. My dad would keep my sister and I up. We live with my dad. He would keep us up because he'd get home from work late. He'd get home from work at like 9:30. He worked for the Chicago Park District on mostly South Side parks. So when he would come home, we'd have a babysitter, pay her, and then he'd keep us up that way, like especially in the summer. That way we would sleep in. So I would stay as like a 5-year-old. I would stay up till 11:30 midnight watching Sanford and Son, All in the Family,
Family,
the
yes.
Odd Couple TV show, all of these things that are on like what would be called like I think it's like channel 26 now, WCIU,
Yes.
like one of those channels where it's just nothing but reruns. And I just loved it. I thought it was hilarious. But I think I remember laughing when my dad laughed because when you're a little kid, you're not going to get every joke that Archie Bunker's spewing out. But
Right.
I don't know. I just like there's something cool about them.
Yeah.
And then when I got a little older, I was big. Grade school, I loved Seinfeld. Cheers, I liked before that. And Cheers is a show mostly before my time, but that's when I think I first fell in love with bars. Because I saw bars like at an early age, like the age of 7. I'm like, bars seem cool. People get together, they're watching sports or playing
Yeah.
pool. It seems awesome. Like that's where I want to be. And it
A
wasn't even
place to
like
be
from
social.
alcohol.
You're a social guy.
Yes, that's what it was. Going into high school, I didn't know anybody because nobody from my public school was going to a all guys Catholic high school.
Mm.
So I sat by myself like the first 3 weeks because I didn't know anybody. And I thought I had this image in my head because the way my dad would talk about the Catholic grade school he went to, where like, oh, the nuns would slap you around if you weren't paying attention. So I kind of thought that's what a Catholic school was. So I was like,
We
this
all
kid,
did.
right? We all did,
Yeah.
but times change. So I would sit at my desk with my hands folded, taking, vigorous notes or whatever. And then one class, I remember because it felt like out of a high school movie what happened afterwards, but I made a joke. I remember it's Mr. Trendle's US history class, but I even waited to make the joke. He said something, and my instinct was like, oh, say this. But I was still a little bit like, "Oh, I don't want to get in trouble. But the joke was just hanging there. So I can't remember what the hell the joke was, but I said it, and everyone got a big laugh from everyone. Even the teacher laughed. So I was like, oh, all right, cool. I guess you can fuck around a little bit here. They're
Mhm.
not going to hit you with a ruler. All right, cool. And then I remember like 2 periods later, it was lunch. And these dudes who were the football players, because football players were allowed to wear their jersey on Fridays, and they like waved me over. And I didn't know anything. I was like, oh, I'm getting waved over. All right. I'm like, hey, what's up, guys? And he's like, hey, tell him what you said in Trendle's class. And I'm like, oh, yeah. So like the joke had gotten around apparently. And I'm like, oh, that's hilarious. Sit down, And then I just started talking to them and then found out we had some more in common. And a lot of those dudes became my best friends. A couple of them stood up in my wedding. So
Wow.
yeah, just weird how that works.
So comedy was early on. You found it as a way to kind of bridge gaps and like reach people and connect with people.
Yeah, basically. Because I think humor, like everyone wants to laugh. Everybody likes to laugh. I feel like it's like comedy and music. Although I'm jealous of music though, because you could have music on in the background. You can't have comedy on the background. You got to pay attention. But yeah, it's just such a thing that humor, it brings people. I was thinking about this the other day, and maybe listeners might think I'm a little wrong, but I noticed because I was going through like the comedy albums I have. I started collecting like comedy vinyls like a few years ago. I don't have a ton, but I was like, it feels like all of my favorite comedians have a background of either being Jewish, Black, or Irish. And I know those 3 groups of people at one point or another dealt with a shitload of oppression, right? And I feel like when you are poor and sad and all this kind of stuff, comedy is massive. You know what I mean? Like you go through shit. There's got to be that one person who's going to sidle up next to you and just be like, say something funny, say something you're not going to expect just to get a laugh out of you. Because like fucking life's hard.
Yeah.
So that's where I kind of feel like comedy is what I used. I'm like, all right, this is what I could do. This is how I can stand out. Also, I had really bad acne, 6th to 8th grade. So if I wanted the girls to like me, I had to make them laugh. Yeah.
Wow.
So
Yes.
yeah,
Laughter
it
always
worked
gets
a
the
little bit.
chick.
Yeah, it does.
So transitioning out of high school, making that next step like into college years, what did you do next? How did you bridge that gap from high school into stand-up comedy?
So I was a terrible student in high school. I was one of those kids that had to get like A's. I did ace finals to graduate. Um, and I remember all my teachers being like, "Well, you aced it, and that just shows us you could have been doing this well the whole
Mm.
time." So I don't know if they liked me or hated me for that. And I went to Wright College, which is a community college here in the fine city of Chicago. And I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do there. My grandfather, who we mentioned earlier, he was a judge, and I was into politics at the time. And so I thought, oh, maybe I'll be a political science major. And then most people were like, well, with that major, you typically go on to law school. And I'm like, well, I don't want to go to that much school. I barely like the amount of school I'm going to now. So I kind of felt like none of this is something I'm into, but I still love being the funny guy and I loved comedy. But I was one of those people that when I'd watch a comedy movie, I'd be like, who wrote that? Because to me, that was the real talent. Like, who's the writer of this? Because everyone else is just saying the lines that that guy or girl came up with, right? So then I dropped out of college when I was 21, and I went to Second City to take sketch writing and improv classes because I knew like John Hughes and Harold Ramis, who were two of the big comedy screenplay writers I loved. And I'm like, well, they started there. They went into the writing program. They also did some improv. So maybe that helps with everything. And it's probably a good networking thing and figuring it out. And so I went there. Um, and I was liking it and all that. Improv was frustrating though, because you'd set up a scene and the other person takes it in a different direction. And that would annoy me because in my brain, I'm like, I fuck, dude, it was right there for you.
Mm.
Why did you go this way with it? Because it's improv. So I have to go with whatever direction you take it in now. You know, that whole yes and thing. And so that annoyed me. And then I remember talking to a dude named Jim Zekas, a great guy. And he started talking about stand up. I'm like, stand up, huh? Yeah, were you going to go to an open mic? Yeah, I'm going to stand up open mic. You want to go? And I'm like, yeah, maybe. I don't know. I guess I could try to write some stand up. You know, I didn't really, stand up was not in my, I didn't think about it at all, you know? So I'm like, all right, we'll meet at this open mic. We like looked up Chicago Reader open mic list, Pressure Cafe on Clark near Devon, which is now gone. It's a bar now or something. And we go, but he canceled last minute. He got sick. So I was like, shit, I'm going by myself now. And I went up and I bombed hard. I, I got like a false sense of confidence because I went up like 17th on this open mic list. And so I watched all 16. And I remember being like, I'm funnier than most of these people because there was maybe a couple people who stood out. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to do fine. These are funny jokes. And I'll make them funny when I'm up there. I'll be great. This can, no problem. And then once I got up there, I was so nervous. I was talking like a mile a minute. And I'm already a fast talker. So this was even like times 10. And I remember walking off stage just being like, wow, that sucked. And I overheard a girl say to her friend, he didn't even give us a chance to laugh. And
Mm.
that I'm glad I heard her say that though, because I was like, oh, she's right. I didn't pause. I went joke, 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 bye, and then
Yeah,
laughed. You know what I mean? Like you have to hit the punchline and wait. You
Mm.
know, you have to like learn pacing and cadence and all that stuff. So I was like, oh, damn. So then I went like the next week, or it might have been 2 weeks later, I went up and I did way better. I did really, really good. And so yeah, I remember feeling like, oh, this is the best thing ever. Because I remember told my friends, I'm like, oh, dude, it's the best. They're like, really? Because you felt terrible after and then even they're like, what if the next time goes like the first time? And I'm like, I don't care. I want to keep doing this until it works out or I figure it out or whatever. I'm definitely not going to stop. But here's how dumb I was. And you'll appreciate this as someone who's from the Northwest side of Chicago. My first 4 months, I was going up like once a week. And I remember talking to a couple comedians and they're like, hey, you should try this mic on Tuesdays. And another one's like, you should try this one on Wednesdays. And my response was, oh, I like this one though. And they're like, yeah, dude, you're supposed to be going up like every night. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, because in my brain, I'm like, I go bowling on Wednesdays, softball's Tuesdays,
yeah.
Friday's date night, right?
Sure.
And I go to the movies on Saturday.
Yeah.
Because I was 22. You know what I mean? That's where the world I was in. And they were like, no, dude, to be great. And then they were like, you should read this book or you should check out this documentary. I was just like, oh, all right. You guys are playing with a different deck than me. I didn't realize you have to be that dedicated.
Right.
I thought I was dedicated. I'm like, dude, I've made it 7 Thursdays in a row. I haven't
Yep.
missed this mic.
Yep.
They're like, no, you need to go up 7 times a week. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, okay. So yeah, that was a bit of a culture shock, but I'm glad I dug in though, because then I started going up every night at that
Yeah.
point. At least I was trying like 5, 6 nights a week if I could.
I remember you saying that when I first met you that first night. You said you'd be amazed how good you get if you just keep doing it.
Yeah.
like, and with a regular cadence like that.
I'll talk to a lot of young comedians and I like talking to them, because I remember what it was like. And there, you could tell the ones who are looking for shortcuts and the ones who aren't, because they'll ask. They'll be like, "Oh, what do you think I should do? Or how did you get to this point? Or how do you get booked on this thing? Or how do you do this next?" And I just tell them like, "This is what you got to do. You got to go up as often as you can, whenever you can, and just worry about that. And shake off the bad sets and tweak jokes, and just keep trying to like open up your point of view on things, just all that kind of stuff." And you could see the ones who are just like, "All right, well, that's what I'll have to do." And then there's other ones where they're like, "That's it. That's obvious, duh advice." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's that simple. Go up as often as you can. The more you do things, the more you experience different crowds, the more you'll recognize, oh, if this crowd's getting a little bit like this, I should act a little bit like this." Or you just know how to, you recognize the situation. It's like when people say, like, "Oh, you with age, you have wisdom." It's not like you really get smarter. You just experience more life so you understand what shit's going on. And that's the same thing with comedians who have been doing it 5 years versus 1 year. And I also got very lucky that at the time I started, there was these great comedians in the scene who've all gone on to do amazing things. And whatever reason, they gave me advice, and their advice was cool. TJ Miller told me, I was 3 months in, and I don't even know why he talked to me. I was just by chance, I was standing in the right spot. And he said, how long have you been doing it? I'm like, "Oh, like 3 months." Because I think I had a good set at an open mic like a couple days earlier, or like a week earlier. So I was doing the once a week thing. And this comic Prescott Tolk said, "Oh, this kid's going to be good." And so he talked to me and he said, "All right, you're 3 months in. When you hit the 1 year mark, all the jokes you're doing right now, you're going to hate. And when you hit the 2 year mark, all the jokes you're doing at 1 year, you're going to end up hating.
Mm.
And if you're not feeling that, you're not working hard enough." I had a big fear when I first started where it's like, what if these are the best jokes I ever come up with?
Wow.
Because I thought, which is crazy to think.
Mm-hmm.
But, writing a joke and having people laugh at it, like strangers laugh at it, is an insane feeling. It feels amazing, but it also feels like a magic trick where you're like, what if that one time that's it,
Yeah.
What if I can't replicate that? And yeah, so there's a lot of doubt you get with this game we play.
One of the last sets I saw you do was at CYSK, and you blew my mind. It was
Oh,
one of
thank
the
you.
best sets I've ever seen you do. I loved it so much. And I loved it because it was so Chicago. I love how growing up in Chicago, I love how they make me feel when you talk about your childhood.
I think the trick that all comedians want to do is to talk about our point of view, our lives, in a way that people who didn't grow up that way could appreciate and find funny as well.
You're a father. You have,
Yes, I have two sons. They're 6 and 4.
so what sort of values are you trying to instill in them?
Well, it's kind of like what I talked about with the advice I give young comedians, or what we talked about when we first met. So my older son, my eldest. It sounds weird to say eldest when he's 6, but he loves drawing. He's got like a passion for drawing, and sometimes he'll get like frustrated, a little bit here or there. Not too often, but when he does, or when he does anything, I just remind him. I'm like, "Hey, the more you do it, the better you're going to get." And then I try to show them too. I'm like, "Look at this drawing." And then I'm the dad, and, most parents nowadays, I hope, but the good ones at least will save their kids' artwork. And I'll be like, "Look at this drawing from like a month ago. Tell me it's not." And then I see his face kind of light up because he's like, "Yeah, you're right. The more you do anything, the better you
Yeah.
get at it." Because, like I could tell he wants to be great at a lot of things. And it's nice to remind not just kids, but anyone, you just started. You're not going to be good right away. Nobody's going to be good. I try to get them on positive thinking more. Um, Not that I was ever told not to be a positive thinker, but I definitely like the idea of trying to get the idea of the law of attraction, whether or not people want to believe it or not. I definitely think there is something to, I say it as simple as this. If you go to a party and you think this party's going to suck before you even walk into the party's probably going to suck, right? If you wake up on Monday morning going, "Oh, I hate Monday, this day's going to suck," it's going to suck because you're thinking that way. But if you wake up being like, "All right, you know what? I'm going to get after it. We're going to have a great day." So when I drive my kids to school in the morning, I'm like, "Hey, let's have a great day,"
I
huh? Like
love
I'm
that.
like trying to
Yeah.
pump them up and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just because I think mindset is huge in no matter what area you're trying to tackle, I guess.
Yeah. I believe in that. I believe in the power of manifestation. We've talked about that.
No, I believe that for sure, 100%. Because if you're just focusing your mind on something, I started a new thing, and this is a tip I want to give you and everyone. I just got it. It was a Christmas gift. It's a calendar, but it's the whole year on one like sheet. And so it's all 12 months there. And I taped it to right when I roll out of bed, it's the wall closest to me. So I see it. And what I like about it is I'm trying to plan out my whole year. As a comedian before, I'd make the mistake where I'm like, all right, I got next month booked. This is great. And I rest a little bit. And then all of a sudden March is coming up and I'm like, damn it, I've got nothing booked for March. How did I get so lazy?
Yeah.
So just having the calendar there and reminding me and seeing it, it's just an in-your-face reminder. And then it puts you in that manifestation mode. And yeah, you're going to attract that kind of stuff towards you if you're focusing on it.
You lost your dad 2 years ago.
Yes, almost exactly two. I don't know when this episode's coming out, but it was January 27th of 2022. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was still the hardest thing I've ever experienced. Still has times where it doesn't feel real. The grief's really hard. Like my special that I dropped a few months ago, it's called Good Grief because the last like 7 or 8 minutes I talk about my father's death and how that's impacted me or whatnot, or just I just wanted to share funny stories about my dad because he really was my biggest comedic influence. He was way funnier than me. I've never stolen jokes from another comedian, but I've taken stuff he said and played it off like I came up with it.
Sure.
But yeah, he was just such a funny guy and the absolute best dad. And it came out of nowhere. He wasn't sick, nothing, he just went to sleep and didn't wake up. And, I saw him 2 days before. The last thing he said to me was, oh, I'll see you Friday. Yeah, see you Friday. And that was a Tuesday. And then, I got the call Thursday morning at 6:45, worst phone call ever, the one that everyone dreads getting at some point in their life. But that grief doesn't go away. It doesn't. And there's part of you that doesn't want it to go away.
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't want to forget about him or stop thinking about him. But to bring it back to comedy, it's crazy. Every time I come across a new funny thing, my brain still's like, oh, tell my dad this. And, I don't get to tell him anymore. So that part is still like, fuck, that sucks. And so much what I know about the city I live in is from him. For a while, I hated driving downtown because it just took me back to being a little kid and my dad driving me downtown, So, it is what it is. And, but it definitely, when you lose someone that you love that much, it makes you realize how much, like, every now and then I overhear people or I see people bitching about things where I just want to be like, that does not fucking matter. There are more important things out there. There's family, there's people you love. Because when you lose someone like that, you just start to see things where it's like, that doesn't matter, that doesn't matter. That's petty. Get over that. Like, you're going to die at the end. Did no one teach you that?
So how has losing your dad changed your comedy world or performances?
I say no to things that I used to say yes to. It makes me do more of the stuff I want to do. And when you do more of the stuff you want to do and the more of the things you're excited about, you feel better as a person. And that unlocks more of your creative side. And then you come up with more material and you're just better. You know what I mean? When you feel better, you're going to be better on stage. It's simple math, I suppose. But that's the biggest thing, learning to say no to stuff. Because since he died, I remember my younger sister had an engagement party like 2 weeks before he died, and I took a show instead of going to that. And so like the last family group photo is, I'm not in. So my 3 siblings are in, but I'm not in because I wasn't there, which wasn't a big deal. And the thing is, my dad would have been like, take the money. Like, that was him. Like, he was like, no, always say yes to the money. Do that.
Yeah.
This party's dumb. He would have told me that. I think he probably did. I'm like, oh, I can't make it. He's like, who cares? Go get the money.
Yeah.
We get together and drink all the time, all the stuff like that. Like, you see them all the time. Go make the money. But now looking back, I wish I didn't do that gig.
Of course. Hindsight.
Yeah, it's all
We
hindsight.
beat ourselves up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me a little bit as we close out about CYSK and how that got started.
All right. Comedians you should know. It's it's been going on for 13, 14 years now. It started, or 15 years. The main thing that I want people to take away from Comedians You Should Know is it's the best independent comedy show probably in the country. If I could toot my own horn, I will. It started by a bunch of comedians, Danny Callis, Mike Leibovitz, Drew Michael, Mike Sheehan, Michael Sanchez, Marty DeRosa, and Junior Stopka was there in the beginning too. And those guys were all mad that they weren't getting booked on the big shows at the time. So they're like, well, screw this. We'll do our own show and we'll do it better than anyone else. And the idea was to treat every show, it's a weekly show though, too. It started as a weekly show. But Danny Callis had the idea, if you produce every show like it's the only show you'll ever produce, you're going to put a lot behind it. So we stacked the lineups. We threw production value in. We had people seating people. We had the music just right. We had the room right. All focus was on the comedian. I think a lot of people think you just turn a microphone on and that's it. No, you have to put so much into it. You should have someone seating people, greeting people, get their email, get them coming back, make them feel at home. and make sure the comedians feel at home too, because they're going to tell everyone this show's amazing.
Wow.
And even if you have an off night where the crowd's a little bit of a dud, the comedians are still going to feel appreciated. And
Yeah.
that word of mouth goes a long way too.
What is up next for Joe Kilgallon?
Oh man, I'm booking a lot of out of town stuff because of this calendar. I'm seeing things 4, 5, 6 months out, and it's great for me. I'm working on a children's book too right now. The book's written. I just gotta illustrate it. I got a cool little cute idea for the illustrations that I'm thinking about doing. I'm not gonna really reveal that just yet. It's tentatively called "Listen, sometimes mommy and daddy are gonna yell." And that was off a tweet. I had a tweet where I was like, I wanted to write this book. Because at the time I was reading my kids' books about like, so you're going to be a big brother, or so you're going to go to school for the first time, or so you're going to learn how to go potty. And I'm like, we have all these books that prepare kids for things. Why not a series of books that prepares them for emotions? And naturally, my emotion is anger. Because I tell people, I'm like, there's a difference between being angry and having a bad temper. I have a bad temper, but I'm not an angry person.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm a very happy-go-lucky person. I just have a short fuse. So yeah, the book, I threw that as a tweet, and everyone's like, this is hilarious. I'll buy this when it comes out. I'm like, all right, well, maybe there's something here. And so, because I think kids need to understand, just because mommy and daddy yell doesn't mean we don't love you. Doesn't mean, it happens. Being yelled at is a part of life, and you're going to yell, and people yell, and but it's how you handle that, and learning and understanding that people get mad, and it's okay to get mad.
What is your pie in the sky, your ultimate goal?
My own fan base, where I don't have to do 4 nights in a city. I could do 1 or 2, and I could do it in a bigger venue where the people are fans of me because they like me, they've seen my other stuff, and they're buying that ticket to see me. That's really what I want to do. I want to be able to travel the world even. I definitely want that career where I get to do the shows I want to do for people who genuinely want to see me and who are comedy fans, because that's the best connection right there, right? And yeah, so basically I've already made it because I'm doing what I want to do, but I just want to do it at a bigger scale, and I will, and I'm going to continue to push towards that. So that's my end game.
Well, the exciting part of comedy and meeting new people is you never know who you're going to meet at the next turn, and there's just so many connections to be made. And that's something I've really loved about the comedy world, is just all these random connections, and it might not make sense at the time, but eventually it does. It all kind of works together like a fine work of art, and it all makes sense eventually.
Yeah, that is one of my favorite parts of it. I've gotten to meet so many cool people from all over the place that I never would have met if I didn't enter this world. So I'm wildly grateful for that. That's really cool.
Joe, it's been so awesome having you on
Thank you.
our first
K McG.
recording. Yes. Kelly McG in the house, and we've got Joe Kilgallon.
By the way, I liked how you looked at the camera to say Kelly McG in the house. Like, you knew this is my moment. I got to
Hell
look
yeah.
directly into that lens.
Yes. This has been a long time in the making, so very excited to be here and have you as my first guest, and definitely not the last. So,
Hey, to quote John C. McGinley, the pleasure's all on this side of the table. Okay, all on this side.
classy guy as usual. Okay, Joe. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.
But just don't feel the same.
I do want to ask you, where do you get the best beef on the Northwest side?
Oh, really? You're going to a food question, huh? All right. I think on the Northwest side right now, it's Jay's Beef on Narragansett. It's technically in Harwood Heights. It's on the Harwood Heights-Chicago border. They used to have a location in Wicker Park. That's my favorite right now. Roma's on Cicero is pretty good, but I feel like they got a little expensive. Johnny's is in Elmwood Park. Those are the top 3 for me right now. I mean, Portillo's is still pretty great. People like to, give it a little crap because they've become such a monster chain now, where there used to be just a handful of locations. But Narragansett and Montrose, that's the spot.